Chicago, I'm Dale Montour. It was really quite a masterful plan. First, they said, we'll corral them onto small pieces of land, take away their means of survival, and then we'll tell them they can no longer teach their children. We'll make it mandatory for them to attend our educational institutions, and we'll forbid them to speak their language. They say that once you lose your language, you lose your culture. And I guess one could say that the government's residential schools were an experiment in cultural genocide. On today's show, we'll be speaking to Phil Fontaine, head of the Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs, about the legacy of pain caused by Indian residential schools. And we'll visit two native-run schools where the languages are being revived and where the children are allowed to finally be proud of themselves, their culture, and their ancestors. Phil Fontaine is a very prominent Native leader. He most recently ran in the election for the new chief of the Assembly of First Nations and lost to Ovid Murcody. He continues to be the leader of the Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs. In Ojibwe from Fort Alexander, Phil, like so many other Aboriginal children, was forced by law to attend residential school. Another government plan to take the Indian out of Indians.
Residential schools were apparently the answer to the so-called Indian problem, and it was really part of the government's grand design to turn Indian people, as we were known then, into brown-skinned Europeans with European values and to convert people and to rid our people of any so-called bad habits. You had to take away the children and put them in these institutions away from the influence of the family. Make sure that they forgot about their language. And once you forget your language, of course, you forget about who you are, your culture, your values, your history. And so residential schools had little or nothing to do with teaching us or about who we were as either Ojibwe, Cree, or whatever we were.
In the mid-19th century, figuring out what to do about the Indian problem was on everybody's mind. If they were to be assimilated, it made sense to start with the very young at schools with the aid of religion. This is a quote from a report by Dr. Ryerson, written in 1847. With the Indian, nothing can be done to improve or elevate his character or condition without the aid of religious feeling.
In my case, I was only about 4 miles away from my home, and I knew that. I knew it wasn't very far, yet the only chance I had to see my mother, because my father died when I was in my first year, was on Sunday afternoons for a couple of hours. And the visit, of course, was never a private visit because all of the parents would come into this one room, and the kids would visit there with their parents. In my case, with my mother. And you'd always have the sisters and the priests around. So.
The first residential school in Canada started up in 1848 in Alderville, Ontario. At the height of the experiment in 1931, 80 schools were in operation. In 1965, 10,300 Aboriginal children still attended residential school, and it was only in the early 1970s that the schools started phasing out.
Everything was according to this order that was imposed by the authorities. You spent a large part of your time in church or praying, and we went to classes. Of course, you had to. You had study periods, but everything was, very much to the clock. Well, I guess they had to do it because of the number of kids that were there, but it was very strict. I mean, it wasn't done with any respect for the kids.
Most children attending residential school were there for 10 months. Children from northern communities were shipped great distances to the nearest school, not able to see their families for the entire time. Do you think that this has affected your adult life? You're married now and you have children?
Well, sure it has. Of course, you just can't deny that. And one of the things you lose, of course, is your ability to relate to people as in a family. And when you become a parent yourself, for example, you have to relearn all of these skills that you should normally learn as you grew up in a family. You know, to learn to be affectionate, to learn to be how to relate with brother and sister, and how you relate to mother and father, and the kind of discipline you learn growing up in a family. All of those, of course, are foreign until until I left the residential school and moved in back into my home.
You suffered some abuse while you were in residential school yourself. It must have been very difficult for you to state that publicly. What made you decide to do that?
I wanted to rid myself of some guilt. I wanted to get rid of the shame and all of what that has meant in my life. And it so happens I did it publicly. And I sincerely believed then that it would make it possible for others to do so. And I think the response has borne that out. And because we are inundated with people wanting to talk. And disclosure is the first step. And sure, it was difficult because I put myself out, I exposed myself. And I didn't talk about, you know, the intimate and sordid details of what this abuse was. But that was just one aspect. I didn't want this matter to be, I didn't want the focus to be on the sexual abuse, because that's just one small part of it. I mean, residential school experience deals with all of these other, just as important, if not more important, issues, psychological abuse, physical abuse, and the cultural deprivation, the language loss. Because language is the essence of a person. It represents your culture, your values, and your history. You lose that, you lose everything.
Do you have control of your own education system in Manitoba now?
To a very large extent. Of the 61 communities, there are 35 First Nations that have local control. And the Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs, the organization I head, just signed a 5-year agreement with Indian Affairs. We hope that within 5 years we will dismantle the education component of the regional office and turn that responsibility over to First Nations, either through a management board of some kind or a First Nations Education Trust. And once we do that, we will have taken a very significant step in assuming control over the entire education system.
And that's a positive step.
Oh, absolutely, because I mean, we have to, self-government is really controlling one's own destiny, having the capability and the ability and the opportunity to control our own institutions, including education institutions. I mean, white people take that for granted. We have to demonstrate that we're capable. And we've proven ourselves. We're there to meet the challenge. And we've demonstrated so often that all we need is an opportunity.
Coming up, a school created out of a Mohawk community's determination to have control over their children's education.
As Mohawk people, as Mohawk parents, it's our right, it's our natural right to determine how our children are going to be educated, in what language, in what fashion.
Next, on Aboriginal Voices. Anishna, I'm Alan Deliri. It was a political reaction to a government that said the Mohawk people could not teach their children in a language of their choice or in a manner they deemed appropriate. To Native people, education is an inherent right. So, the Mohawks walked, and they decided to build their own school. That was in September 1978, and what resulted was the Kahnawake Survival School. I spoke with the director of the school, Alex McCumber. Alex McCumber, once a teacher at the survival school and now its director, remembers the events leading up to its creation very well. Before 1978, the children of Kahnawake attended Howard S. Billings High School in Chateauguay, Quebec. When the Quebec government passed its French language law, Bill 101, The community reacted. In that bill was a clause that said any child wanting to be educated in the English language needed an eligibility certificate.
What happened is that the parents got together with the Combined Schools Committee and the Band Council here at Ganawagi and raised the issue that this, in essence, is calling for parents to be asking permission of Quebec to allow our children to be educated in a way that we see fit. And there was unanimity that this isn't the way it's supposed to be. As Mohawk people, as Mohawk parents, it's our right, it's our natural right to determine how our children are going to be educated, in what language, in what fashion. So that was the line that was brought to the, I guess, the ministry and the Chateauguay School Board and Howard S. Billings administration in September. I think it was September 7th, 1978.
About 1,000 Mohawk people went to Chateauguay with a request to let the Ganawagi children in without an eligibility certificate. They were refused, and so there was a symbolic march back to Ganawagi.
The next morning, people got together at the Knights of Columbus Hall to say, well, we've walked out of a high school. We have 250, 280 students who are not in school. What are we going to do? And so the people said, well, we've talked about wanting to have our own high school in Ganawagi for years, so let's do it. And everybody just rallied around and said, yeah, let's do it. And that's, in essence, how Survival School was born, as a political reaction to what our people considered then and still considered to be an oppressive legislation, a foreign government trying to tell Mohawk people what to do and how to educate our children. You know, that we had gone through that with residential schools, when students first went to Billings, having to live, you know, with prejudice, racism, not having the type of courses that would support our culture and our ways. All these things. This was the last straw. We talked about a name. So, well, we don't want Ganawagi High School. We don't want Kaknawaga High School, anything like that. It's got to be something different. We've started this school on a very strong statement, and so the name has to reflect that. And so someone came up, I don't remember who it was, but came up with the name Ganawagi Survival School, meaning that the Mohawk people and the Mohawk Nation have to survive into the 21st century. We have to survive living in a global village now, which means two things. One, that we as Mohawk people have to pass on our ways, our language, our traditions, our values, and our history to our young people. That's got to go on forever among our people. But then the other thing is the realization that the ways of our ancestors and, you know, I guess the physical setting that our ancestors lived in is gone. It's changed. And so we have to be adaptable, which means then the young people have to learn to be successful in whatever way.
The Ganawagi Survival School is like most other high schools across the country in terms of its curriculum. The difference, of course, is that it's theirs.
We offer the similar type of courses that you would find in any standard North American high school, which means that there's language arts, the reading and writing skills, mathematics, sciences. Foreign language is French. French is taught at all grade levels and is a compulsory subject here at the Ganawagi Survival School. And our Mohawk language, of course, which is the added curriculum that other schools would not have. We teach Mohawk language as a subject to the students. The one course that's very different and I think reflects our culture is our social studies program. If you go to the States, they teach American history. You go to Canada, they teach Canadian history. You go to one of the different provinces, they teach their own provincial history. Here at Ganawagi, the young people learn the history of the Iroquois people. They learn the history of Ganawagi. They learn the history of North America through Ganawagi's eyes. They learn about North and South America by looking at other Ongwehunwe people and where they live and how they live. And they look at world history in a comparative sense, comparing different cultures of the world with our own, and looking at historical facts and things that have happened and comparing it with our ways, which then leads into a little bit of economics, current affairs, modern issues that affect everybody. So, you know, the environment works its way right in.
After the Mohawk crisis of the summer of 1990, the Survival School's registration went up by 90 students. They feel good here. They feel safe here. They are with their own people.
We're confident that this is the place where these young people need to be. They need to be with our own people, learning our own ways. And now somebody may say, well, then you're just sending them down a narrow path. That they're going to become racist and, biased. They're not going to learn about the outside world. The realization is that as teenagers, they are still young people in one sense, and they still need to have a stronger grounding in our home. And in our home, it's not just a physical place, but I think also being around our people and our ways. And that once they finish their high school experience, then they're encouraged, yes, go out there and learn more now. And from students who have gone on to CJET in college, different places, they come back and they say, well, yeah, maybe we had a hard time in school. We don't have the same high academic levels as some private school in Montreal. So they have to maybe, work a little bit harder in classes, but they have a stronger sense, a stronger self-identity that they can then carry themselves and find out about the world, and if it's the world of, post-secondary education, or if it's the work world, well, then they're able to make their way through the maze better.
Coming up, an elementary school in northern Ontario where culture is very big on the curriculum list. Next, on Aboriginal Voices. On the North Channel of Lake Huron, you'll find another native-run school. This time it's an elementary school, but the reason for its inception is the same as that of the survival school.
It originally started so that we can have, or Sagama could have control of their education. People in the community felt that the students weren't really getting a good education. For what reasons? It's hard to say. We do have some idea, but a good education in town. Over the past few years, we've done studies, and about 55% or more of our students have been involved in special education by the time they've graduated from grade 8 going into secondary school.
In the last 5 years, the school has gone from having only kindergarten to grade 2 all the way up to grade 7. Vaughn Johnson is the school's principal. Like most of the teachers, the relationship he shares with the students is one of respect. There is a lot of laughter and affection in this school, and it shows on their faces. Vaughn, what changes have you seen take place in the children since the school became Indian-controlled?
We've seen two changes. Academically, as I mentioned, 55% of our students or more have been involved in special education. I would say now, this is just an estimate, I would say now we're on average of any other school that have students involved in special education in some way. We still have some students that need more help than others. We do have a small amount that need resource withdrawal, where they will go leave the classroom and go to the resource room for about 20 minutes to half an hour a day for extra help in math or language arts, and then return to their classroom for the rest of the program. Behaviorally wise, we've seen a complete turnaround in the children's behavior. Not that their behavior was bad in the provincial schools, but the shyness. As most people are aware that Native people are usually very shy. That's always been a problem integrating into a white community, is the shyness of the Native students. Here, we still have some students that are very shy yet, but most of them are more outgoing because they know other students, their community members, so the shyness aspect is really not there. You get that when they first start, but that's probably common to most schools, and they'll grow that quickly.
How important is the Native culture in the school curriculum?
The community members have expressed a great interest in teaching the cultural component to their students, our students, their children. Right now, we are in the process of adding a little bit at a time. It's hard to say exactly how we should add that, but we'll be looking at the end of this school year and setting up a better or more well-adjusted program in that curriculum. Right now, we do have, as you were taking earlier, with our singers, and we do have socials at the community center every now and then. We bring people in with native dancing, other drummers. We try to include components in the classrooms. We try to use the circle as much as possible, as this is a tradition in native cultures. We have the native language from JK up to 7, as our school only goes to grade 7 right now. And they get language 3 times a week.
When I think back to what it was like for Aboriginal children going to school in this country not even 20 years ago, and I look at the faces of these children, the future starts to look a whole lot brighter.
That's our program for this week. But before we go, let's preview what's coming up on the next Aboriginal Voices.